Of course, my program wants to start off with a token cut the first year, cut the budget by $1 trillion. But you really do have to get the endorsement of the people. People have to think it's in their best interest to allow this to happen. If you don't reverse it, we're going to go off a cliff, because you can't keep spending, borrowing, and printing money and continue to do what we're doing. And I think that's what's happened to the country these last 4 years, this recognition. We have to ask the important question that the founders asked way back. They asked the question, what should the role of government be? And they came down with the conclusion, it shouldn't be the role of the king. We want to get rid of the king. Dictatorship, because we have the dictatorship of the majority. If the majority can get together and gang up on the producers, they do it. They undermine our personal liberties as well as they undermine our economic well-being. So we cannot accept this notion that 51% can rule over the minority, because that is what's happening. But the country is now bankrupt, and it isn't going to last much longer. Question about what the role of government ought to be, it should be rather simple. Defend liberty. Yeah! Welfare from cradle to grave. We found out in the last century that communism and radical socialism is a total failure. But the system we have today of radical welfarism and interventionism isn't working either. So we have to reject this notion that more people can be taken care of by government planning and economic intervention. But there's another major issue that we have to deal with if you want to cut spending. As a matter of fact, I think it's the place where we should start. It should be the easiest place. And that is this outrageous spending overseas in the world. Declaration. No more wars without a congressional declaration. We need to... also said that the best thing to do is stay out of the internal affairs of other nations. Don't go into nations. And don't pretend that we have the wisdom nor the money to be the policemen of the world. That's what we're doing. We'd have a stronger national defense, not weaker. We would become more vulnerable. We would be bringing our troops home, and the military personnel, they would be spending their money here at home instead of in Germany and Japan. Tragic what's happening. Of course, they would like to paint those of us who don't believe we should be fighting all these wars as lacking patriotism and not supporting for the troops. And they fail to remember too often the fact that our campaign gets more money from the active military being more when I see the veterans coming home and supporting our cause. They've been there. They've been on the fighting line. And then they're coming back and they're suffering. They don't get the treatment they need. And so many need need some help. And right now, we're in an epidemic of suicide, of people coming back from all the trauma that happened over there. I saw some statistics the other day. You know, you think of World War II and Vietnam, that the military, they were under terrible conditions. But compared to the time that you're under stress and potential death in combat, it's about 1,000 hours compared to 100 hours in the other wars. So it is because the war goes sort of unnoticed, very, very stressful, and it's included millions of Americans. And just think of the consequence of those who lost their lives and their families, the ones that are coming back that are crippled, as well as the people who are looking for help. It is a major problem. That has to cease. We can't afford it It makes no sense. We need to get these wars over with. We need to stop. The wars and the entitlement system, the welfare system, could not be financed if we had to pay taxes every month and pay for these bills. But seductively, they borrow and pay it later on, and they print the money and they delay the cost. I used to talk about the next generation will bear the cost. I don't talk that way. We're paying the cost. There's another important reason that we should be very leery of these wars. When they're not declared, they just go on and on. But during a wartime, people have traditionally been more willing to give up some of their personal liberties. I've come to the conclusion that you never have to give up personal liberties for more security. I don't certainly after 9/11, we all understood the stress and the trauma that came from that. But it wasn't an excuse to give up our liberties. There was no excuse to pass the Patriot Act. If the Patriot Act had been called the Fourth Amendment Act, it would have never been passed. We lost so much of our personal liberties here at home. They're systematically being undermined still. We lost so much with the Patriot Act, the loss of our privacy, invasion of our emails, and all correspondence and financial records. But it continues. 1 year ago, our president announced that it was official policy that the United States government could assassinate an American citizen without by an executive order. Guess what? A constitutional president could reverse that by reversing that executive order. You know, within the last couple of weeks, another piece of legislation was passed. You know, the intrusion into the affairs of others and the use of our CIA has been more or less out of control for a long, long time. But at least they had the brains to know it was illegal and they kept it secret. But now they are so bold. When you think of the National Defense Authorization Act, they're coming out. Passed, and what it says is the military can arrest an American citizen with no charges, no trial, and also that they could be held indefinitely in a secret prison. That's getting pretty close to the Enabling Act. I think it's very, very dangerous. It has to be reversed if we want to live in a free society. We don't deal with what's happening at our airports, that we're derelict in our duties. We see federal agents without proper permission groping and x-raying and prodding and groin checking and everything in the world. And for us to look at these pictures, and if we accept this, the whole thing is, it didn't make us any safer. It doesn't make us any safer. It teaches us just to be submissive to the state. That's what has to be said. It's not only the wars overseas that contribute to this attitude that the federal government can run and trample over our rights. It's the wars against the American people here at home. It's the drug war that has early part of the last century, and that was the prohibition of alcohol. At least back then. Back then they thought they had to amend the Constitution to put all those prohibitions on people. Now they just do it. But that was a bad experiment, and finally the country woke up and repealed it. And we really need to do that. As a physician and a person in politics, let me tell you, when people are addicted to drugs and have to go out and kill and rob to get that addiction fed, that's a lot. We treat drug addiction a lot different than we treat alcohol addiction. Even that's a drug too, and a deadly drug. Very, very dangerous. Alcohol is dangerous. It's back to who's supposed to protect us from ourselves? Who's supposed to take care of us? Who's supposed to teach us? For children, it should be the parents, and we have to have the notion that bureaucrats and politicians have our best interests at heart. That's a but there is a revolution going on in this country, and it's a delightful one. We remembered a better day, and we have a great tradition. We have a constitution that we can look to, and this is what's happening in the country. I don't know exactly what's going to come out of the campaign, but I know that Colorado can offer a tremendous boost to the cause of liberty. So many answers for us because it's based on tolerance and bringing people together. People come together because they want their freedom, and they're not arguing over how they want to use their freedoms. We don't argue over how you want to practice your religious beliefs or you don't want to practice, but we want religious freedom to bring people together. That's the way it should be with all social, personal issues, to bring people together. Legalize freedom of choice, that you endorse the way people use it. But we don't do that. We don't endorse what people do with their religious freedoms, but we recognize that this is the principle of us assuming responsibility for us and running our lives as we so choose. That's what freedom is all about. One of our goals ought to be is the seeking of virtue and excellence. When governments get involved in divvying up and passing out excellence and virtue, watch out. But when they do attempt, which they're doing it all the time, you know, perfect economic equality and teaching people what their habits ought to be and doing it all the regularly. When they do that, they only can do it at the expense of liberty. And they expand the liberty, but they accomplish no goals. It's no better than when they try to give everybody a free house. I mean, the results are bad. But today is an opportunity. If we're living in a time where this 50, 60, 70, especially since the Depression, this experiment in economic intervention and planning and fiat money, the failure is on the table, it's there, something has to replace it, and I know what we ought to do.